Lucy, I'm so excited to talk to you. Now, before we get into the show, which I'm loving, by the way, how are you doing during these strange times? Like, what's keeping you motivated and happy right now?
Well, thanks for having me on the show. And
Yeah.
it's so nice to talk to you. You're in Canada, right?
Yeah.
How exciting. I love Canadians.
Oh, yay. We love you.
Everything is going actually really well. I'm living with, my mom and my son. So it's 3 generations under one roof, which is, it's a very Asian community right now. But we're doing well. I mean, we're eating in, we're going to the farmer's market when we need to get food, and just trying to be as safe as possible, and, just keeping our neighbors in mind, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that sounds pretty good, actually, your situation right now. That sounds awesome. I am loving Why Women Kill. I mean, I think when it comes to the first season of a lot of shows, it takes a couple of episodes for the audience to really connect to the characters, but I was hooked within the first 5 minutes. Honestly, I love it that much. What initially drew you to this show?
I had a really wonderful conversation with Mark Cherry, who, as you know, is a very colorful and vibrant and funny human being and writer. And he sort of took me down the journey of where Simone was going to go emotionally, and the trajectory of their connection between her and her husband, Carl, who is the other character in our storyline, who's wonderful, played marvelously. It wasn't just a funny kind of dynamic about, women and murder. It actually had some kind of a connection to politics and the AIDS crisis in the 80s. And I loved that it was not just one thing. So he sort of layered all of these things on top of each other, which made it special. And of course, working with Jack Davenport was magnificent.
Yeah. As you were saying, the cast on this show is really amazing. There's such a strong element of strong female characters and their very personal journeys throughout season 1. Was that something that excited you to explore and to be a part of when it came to the show?
Absolutely. I mean, I think anything that is bringing women to the forefront and making them interesting and very complicated characters is always going to make me more interested in working on something. And I do think the various decades that are highlighted show how times have changed, but I think people's reactions to how infidelity, when it comes into your life, how do you deal with it? And it's an emotional range, which is going to change, how you're going to develop as a human being.
Yeah. Simone does have quite a tough storyline. As you were saying, her husband is cheating on her with a man or several men. Was exploring that LGBTQ plus storyline and the way in which Simone handles it, something that really spoke to you?
I mean, I think that there's different levels of shock for her. I think the huge impact was that he was unfaithful to her, and that she found out in a way that was not through him, but through somebody else, number one. And she was throwing this very lavish party where she was sort of, the center of attention, or wanted to be the center of attention, and then discovered this in the midst of that. And then to find out that it was with a man, and that had been going on for how many years, who knows? It was beyond, files of disappointment. She was crushed, and she had, this is her third marriage, and she had married him for love.
Yeah.
And so I think the deception and the hurt and the pain really creates this journey for her where she makes some really bad choices.
Not saying it lightly. There's such an emotional storyline when it comes to this character, but also Simone has the best clothing. She has some of the funniest lines. How much fun do you have kind of immersing yourselves in that 80s world?
I loved it. I loved the costumes. I loved the glamour, the big hair, the makeup, the lavish, opulent lifestyle, and the sort of the economics of that time. There was a sort of a blind way of living. You know, we never talked about the environment. You never talked about anything but, you know, oneself. It was very sort of egocentric. And I think she starts to open her eyes to a lot of her world once she realizes that, you know, she's been duped.
Yeah, absolutely. You rock shoulder pads like no one else. It just looks amazing. You know, diversity is something that a lot of people are talking about right now. You've been in some of the greatest, you know, movies and TV shows. Are you noticing change in the industry? Is this a time that you're feeling inspired right now?
I think right now there is a need for more change, and it's not going to happen overnight. And I think, you know, that racial injustice is something that's very prevalent in our society, in our world. And, you know, in our community of entertainment, it has been something that is more recently being recognized as something that people need to pay attention to and really make drastic changes. I don't know that it's going to shift immediately, but I think that people are trying to highlight that more. And I'm glad to be in a community that is aware of that and willing to at least acknowledge that things can be better.
Just to wrap things up, Charlie's Angels is celebrating its 20th anniversary this year. It's one of my ultimate favorite movies. Do you have like a really fond memory of being on set with Drew and Cameron, or just, you know, a day on set that really stands out for you?
I mean, every day was pretty magnificent. We had so many different costume changes and makeup changes and wigs. And I mean, every day it was like going to a candy store and doing something crazy, whether it was stunts or being out, you know, in the Palisades or the ocean in scuba gear. I mean, I mean, it's funny that time has flown by. I mean, 20 years, 2 decades. It seems like we just did it yesterday, you know? I remember being at the Griffith Park Observatory and, you know, shooting there with our wonderful crew. And I mean, who knew that it was going to be such a big deal to put 3 women on a magazine cover or in a movie that was going to highlight women. I don't know, you know, I don't know how it hadn't been done before then. And, you know, I don't know that it took that long for it to happen. And that was 20 years ago. I think we're still making changes, and I think we still have a little ways to go.